applied for. By the time you get them, we know how those licenses are obtained. We also know that a person who wants to start an honest business cannot start without bribing the corrupt. Therefore, I feel that Manjeet is right, and Gopinath himself has admitted that he has been through these situations where he had to, bribe people or do things which he did not wish to do. So therefore, I support Manjeet and I support the motion of the House.
All right, Satish Manishinde, thank you very much indeed. You say there's no honest business. The fact is that whether they like it or not, Indian companies are being forced into honest business by their dealings with foreign companies, aren't they? Particularly the American ones.
It's not necessary that those foreign companies don't get into corruption.
But look at Bharti Walmart. I mean, there
are a few companies. I have dealt with cases
where the CBI
I have dealt with cases where the CBI is investigating where monies have been paid to squash those cases. I can't give those instances because I have dealt with such cases.
But at the same time, they're being leaned on by American companies who are being leaned on by their own legislature, and it's making a difference.
It's possible that the American system and the English system have the Bribery Act and the FCPA, but even those
Foreign Corrupt Practices Act.
Yes, even those acts are meant only to curb corruption. It's not necessary that the foreign companies who come into business in India are honest. We have seen a number of cases where kickbacks are given. Kickbacks are given not only through various...
I wasn't saying it was a magic wand, but it is something over people's shoulders saying, you better watch out because the Americans are coming. In the case of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act.
I don't think the American system is
in America or with America, you're going to have to be compliant to the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act.
You may comply, but it's not necessary that the American system is free of corruption.
What about honest business in Gujarat and in Bihar, for instance? There have been real changes in Gujarat and Bihar.
There has been a big change, but I don't rule out corruption in Gujarat because...
Not ruling it out, but they have made some...
They have made inroads. There's a lot of transparency. There is Narendra Modi, who compels his ministers to obey the law.
Not a bad thing then.
But then
what about Bihar? Would you say the same thing about the chief minister there?
Bihar has been making a progress, but I also know
it's big progress.
that the chief minister has to run a political party.
Yeah, but it's fast-track courts he set up. 66,000 criminals convicted.
Well, 66,000
3 members of parliament as well.
66,000 is a minuscule in compared to the cases that we see in court.
Yeah, but it's a start. It sends a signal, doesn't it?
It's a beginning. That's why I said that we have to clean the system.
All right. Satish Manishande, thank you very much indeed. Now could I ask, please, Rajeev Chandrasekhar to speak against the motion for 2 minutes, please.
Tim, it's quite obvious that this is a tough position to argue against. So let me start with that, and you give me a bit of a hand.
We know you're up to it.
Yeah. So, and the reason for that is what Gopi mentioned, that this perception of rampant corruption, this news flow of scams and scandals, is enough to make everybody believe that the entire system is broken. And against a backdrop, and Manjeet mentioned this backdrop, which is that most of the recent wealth creation in India is really in land, in resources, in infrastructure, in real estate, where proximity to government and politics is really the competitive advantage that businesses seek, get, and therefore create success. Look, my entrepreneurial background is in telecom, and if anybody's read a newspaper here recently or in the last 12 months, you know that most of the scams and scandals are in telecom. So if there is anybody here who should really be hugging Manjeet and Satish and saying, I support this motion, it should be me. But I don't believe the motion as it's worded today is correct, because the motion does not represent or describe the many entrepreneurs and businesses that represent the other side of the picture. So there is clearly the good. You must not forget that there is a good, and there is maybe something that is, very bad and is occupying everybody's mental space right now. And let me explain how this works. Indian business operate in 2 broad spaces. One is the regulated space where the big brother, the government, the IAS officer and the politician is involved in every breath you take. And then there is this other space which is really out of the benevolent sight and gaze of the government and the bureaucrat. And there are many fine businesses that have been created there. Some Tim mentioned, some you will know. They are in technology, they are in entertainment, they are in hospitality, they are in services, they are in media, they are in domestic FMCG. And these are all good companies. And I am currently an investor. And I can tell you, I've invested in 5 companies that are fine companies, young, vibrant entrepreneurs who find it absolutely unnecessary today to bribe or to do anything because their markets are elsewhere, markets are abroad.
Could you come to a close?
Yeah, quickly. It is difficult to be an honest business. It is not easy. And the price that you pay to be an honest business is really that you lose a lot of business and you have to work much, much harder than everybody else. But just like there is bad apples in judiciary, bad apples in the politics, and bad apples in media, there are bad apples in business as well. But there are good apples, and don't forget that.
Okay, Rajeev Chandrasekhar, thank you very much indeed. The system stinks today because the people at the top cause and enable the stink, helped along with their cozy and illicit relationships with business interests and businessmen. You said that.
Yes, I agree.
You're on the wrong side, aren't you?
No, I'm only defending ourselves against the contention that all businesses are bad. I am the first one to admit there are some really, really bad rotten apples out there. But to say and to deny the spotlight to the good apples and the people who are actually doing their bit to create good franchises is unfair.
But the good apples are what? The tiniest of tiny minorities here? I mean, things have got pretty desperate, haven't they? When the government actually suggests decriminalizing bribe giving, it's a huge admission of defeat, isn't it?
Look, I don't think there's a soul on this planet or a soul in India that would say that India is at an inflection point in terms of this challenge of corruption.
But they're giving in, aren't they? They're giving in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the government, so I mean, the government is giving in great. I mean, I don't speak for the government, but the point here is that there are good businesses, and I will maintain that there are good businesses, just there are good people and that there are bad people.
Where are these good businesses? Who are they?
They're all over.
Are you a good business?
Fortunately for me, I'm not in any business. So, you know, the only business...
You have been?
Yeah, I have been. And I told you, I've been in telecom and I've seen some real price stories of corruption in that.
Did you go along with any of them?
You know, like Gopi said, I'm saying very candidly, there's absolutely no option that you have if you get yourself...
But he said there was an option. He said it takes longer and you lose along the way, but there is an option.
Tim, I ran a business that went bankrupt twice over. So it was not for want of fighting that I did, you know, I fought. I went bankrupt, and, you know, some people know this, some people don't. But the fact is, there are people who choose to stay outside these spaces and remain honest. If you walk in to a lion's den, then you be prepared for bloodshed, which is what you do. If you walk in...
And you stayed out, or you were...
No, I got out.
You were tempted
back in. I went in there with a sense of idealism.
And you left with it intact?
Left with some parts of my body and soul intact, but swearing never get back there again.
And which one's not?
Well, we'll discuss that outside this, yeah.
But, all right.
But he got into politics.
Yes.
Yeah.
He got into politics after those 2 businesses.
All right. Well, we'll come on to that in a little later. We're going to take a break now. When we come back, a question to our audience. Who is most to blame for India's cycle of corruption, business or government? That's in a few moments. Join us then. Welcome back. During the break, we took a sample of audience opinion on the question who is most to blame for the cycle of corruption, government or business. The result was 15% of you said business was to blame, 15, and 85% said government was to blame. A rather conclusive result. Manjeet Kripalani, surprised?
A little bit, only because I think the audience is quite young. They haven't been in businesses as yet to know how bad it can be.
Their parents have, I'm sure.
Well, their parents have, but they're not going to tell them
that nodding their heads over there.
That they have been actively participating in corruption. Actually, it's not the ordinary entrepreneur, business entrepreneur that participates in corruption. It's the big business elite that has, you know, since India's independence, actually has captured the space and doesn't want to let anybody else in.
Captain Gopinath, you feel vindicated by the extraordinary result from the audience, only 15% blaming business?
As I said, it's not really totally black and white. I very candidly said and I admitted that I have compromised once, but repeatedly, not once, 3-4 times. Even second time when I came for the airline license, which is unlike the helicopter license, which is inconsequential. And the airline license, in those days, the existing players did everything to stop my license. And believe me, I'm swearing on my daughter, I did not pay.
They did it just to get some money out of you, didn't
Yeah,
they?
they were,
for no better reason than that.
Yeah.